Welcome back to the More Than a Mindset podcast with myself, A.
And myself, Bio.
Today we're going to be discussing the topic of education. Again, these are just our thoughts and opinions. So if you want to have your say in the conversation, just leave your comments in the comment section below.
And follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at More Than Mindset.
All right, first question is education important?
Just before we jump into that, I'll just like a little clarification about what it sounded like I was saying on the last podcast. I don't necessarily feel that we need a specific black community due to us living in such a multicultural society. However, I do feel there should obviously be more unity and so on.
All right, cool. So, is education important?
Firstly, let's look at the definition of education. What I've got here is the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction, especially at school or university. And another definition is an enlightening experience. So that being said, obviously every human being needs education. They need a way of learning that which they need to survive in life. They need a way of learning the skills, you know what I mean, and all of that will help them in society. As for how it relates to black people specifically, then I feel that we need education again. Just education about our history and about who we are and about where we've come from.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things to discuss when you're discussing education is the correlation between education and success. Success is a subjective thing. There's no one universal way of thinking that you can describe the word success. So I think one of the most important things when it comes to discussing education is to separate being educated to being successful. There are certain streams and certain jobs and careers that you need formal education for, but you can be just as successful not choosing to follow the academic route. I think that's one of the things that needs to be spread. Like we were saying in the previous podcast, a lot of the times the message is you go to school so you're able to get a job, when really and truly you go to school so you can be able to do whatever it is you want to do in life. And I feel like school is a good place to develop as a person. You go through the academics, but this is where you conceptualize. This is where you do most of your growing up. You start meeting people from different backgrounds and different areas. So outside of the education system and the platform, what it is actually a great place for you to grow as a person and also extend your mind academically. So for education, I think it's really important to realize that not everybody learns the same, and the British schooling system, in my opinion, is not the best. It's not a system that teaches you to learn. It's a system that teaches you to remember answers for a test.
Yeah.
So you're not gaining knowledge. You're never really in like state schools taught to challenge the way of thinking. Anytime I came up against a teacher and said, actually, nah, I think it's this, they wouldn't say, okay, let's, as a class, discuss it. It was just straight, no, you're wrong, I'm right, let's get back down to what we're doing in this lesson. And I think that part of education is surely just academic, and it's to do with an agenda that the schools have with filtering certain amount of students up through universities, taking their A-levels and such, and it comes back to the mindset that they're putting on the kids, that if you don't do well in school, that you won't do well in life, which is a two-sided coin. On one hand, it is, yes, you probably won't do as well in life because the formal education system, as in getting your GCSEs and your A-levels, are kind of a benchmark that they have in the UK. So
because that's how the society set up.
Society set up to look at, okay, you went to school because it's mandatory for you to go to school till 18, and they say, okay, well, at this time when you was in school, what did you achieve? And if you achieved anything lower than 5 A to C's or 3 A levels, then you're already on a different path to someone who went to school and got all their GCSEs, all their A levels. And if your aspiration is to go on to an academic career or something of that sort, where you need that foundation of good GCSEs and good A levels, you'll always be on the back foot. But again, that's not the only way to be successful in life, is by going to university. So if you have that knowledge from young, you will take out of school what you need to take out of school, rather than just thinking, okay, I need to learn maths, English, because the teacher says so.
And just to add, like you said, that's not to belittle the learning of maths and English and whatever. Of course, learning English is important if you live in England. It's extremely important, I feel, to be articulate and to be able to put across what you want to say in whatever language you speak. You understand? Maths, of course, has its importance. Science has its importance also. Just to bring it, obviously, we're living in England, so English people, they teach in school history. And that history that we learn in school refers to, you know what I mean, like European history. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
The reason I mention that is because I feel that we as a people are miseducated about our history.
Boy, I can't disagree. Yeah, we're definitely miseducated, or there's definitely a gap in our knowledge of where we as black people have come from. You know, just throughout life, especially in your school system, the story of black people starts at you were chased, captured, and put on a ship. And from there you were civilized, and we made you beneficial. We incorporated you into society. Before you interacted with us, you weren't making money, you weren't surviving. All you was doing was warring with each other, and you were nothing. You were animals, basically. Yeah. Like this, yeah, not be around the bush. Basically, before the white man came and civilized you guys, you were all a bunch of wild animals, and you should be thankful that we came in, enslaved you for a number of years, because we know what's right for you. Yeah. That is where our history starts, and that, quite frankly, is not true, and plays a lot into how people perceive themselves. And because we are miseducated on what we did before slavery, people are very much trapped in that mindset of, actually, because the white man says I'm only good for dribbling a basketball, singing, running fast, and committing crimes, that I must now fit that narrative.
Obviously, this miseducation, there's an old proverb, many people know it: until the lion learns to speak, the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Because if someone goes and then conquers a land, then they're going to make it look like they were some, you understand, they were some super like glorious people who went and helped these needy people. You understand what I'm trying to say? And this is exactly what happened. Because people, from what I see, people in general, they don't like to sort of mistreat people, or they feel bad about doing so. So for such a wide amount or a wide range of people to then go and enslave Africans or enslave whoever it is, there needs to be a level of propaganda, because that's what it is propaganda. So one of the ways that they were able to go and enslave the people is that they said that these people, these Africans, they're animals. They're uncivilized. They need to be civilized, and they need to be saved. So this obviously has fed into our history from then up until this point, such that people now, I remember we used to have arguments in school It was a kind of African versus Caribbean thing. And there was one person, what he said, it kind of upset me. But he said that, you Africans were uncivilized, and then the white people came and then saved us, they civilized us, and now the Caribbeans are more civilized than the Africans.
Wow.
This was something he said. To be fair, we were 14 at that time. I'm sure he doesn't think that anymore, or maybe even at the time of saying it was a joke, I'm not sure. But it's just that mentality. Do you understand? We see how it feeds into this society now. So black people are obviously miseducated about their history, and there's a need for actually gaining correct education to re-educate black people about what we were before slavery. Our history didn't start with slavery, because even on Black History Month, that's what we learn. On Black History Month, you learn about history from the civil rights movements, or from, that we were on boats and we were locked up, and you understand? And this is true, and it's important to learn about that, because it happened. This is what happened to our ancestors. And those in the civil rights activists at that time, they sacrificed their lives, literally. How many of them got shot? How many of them died? How many of them were locked up for how long? You understand? So they literally sacrificed their lives. So it's not to be overlooked. However, that's not all our history is. It didn't just begin when the white people came. That's not where it is. There's how many empires? The empire of the Shanghai Empire, the Ghana Empire, the Mali Empire, that existed before all of this slavery and so on. And there's many empires that even exist, the ancient Egyptian Empire. Even today, they still can't explain how pyramids were able to be built in that time when they had no sort of technology as we know it now. Do you understand? So it's obviously important for us to actually learn and be educated about our history and how it actually started, not just we came to England and we were civilized.
Yeah. So as you've been saying all that, I totally agree with it. And kind of going back to what we were saying on the podcast about the black community, I'm just thinking, where can we go to learn this? Like, we can go and educate ourselves, but where can our children go to learn this in a formal setting? And that's why I was kind of on the track to say, listen, this is one of the reasons why we need a black community, because we can't expect the British school system to teach our children that we are more than what they want us to feel we are. So once you learn your history before slavery, it changes the narrative of who you are as a black person. It's not that you were an animal and you were civilized. It was actually, you were great philosophers, great mathematicians. You had a thriving economy. You were nations. You were happily surviving before the white men came over and enslaved you. So once you change that and you actually say, we're all on a level playing field, because there is that certain arrogance that the oppressors have to say that we are, doesn't matter how equal we say we are, in our heads, we know that we are above you, yeah? And everything you have now is all to do with us, and you haven't made anything of yourselves off of your own merit. So I think the question is, where do we go to learn about our black history?
Well, obviously, as we've mentioned, there's obviously certain places that to teach, black history, or they teach black history, and in what I view to be more correct. However, even these places, they seem to go a bit to the extreme, some of them, or a lot of them really, and this is just from my personal experience. I haven't been everywhere, but my uncle used to say that when you swing a pendulum and you let it go, before it reaches balance and before it reaches equilibrium, it's going to go all the way to the other extreme. So if you swing it to the right, it's going to have to go all the way to the left until it reaches balance. So this is what we see with a lot of these organizations. that, such as like the Nation of Islam and or the Nation of so-called Islam, who they preach that white people are devils, and you understand, and a lot of these organizations, they have, from what I see, they have a lesser version of that, such that they feel that black people are better than everyone, and you know what I mean, there's some special right that black people have because they're black. I personally, I don't agree with that. However, I feel that it's important to learn about our history and about who we are and where we've come from, because it is us. As you said, you know what I mean, a person who doesn't know his history is like a tree with no roots. As for your question was, where do we go? Then obviously we need to, you know what I mean, have more places that actually teach this. Yeah. But again, I don't want people to think that this is something divisive, something that, you know what I mean, because someone's learning about his history, that it means that he's separating from society. Because now we learn about English history, no one calls it divisive. The Chinese, they learn about their history, no one calls it divisive. So when black people want to learn about their history, suddenly it's all, you know what I mean, nah, it's reverse racism, it's this, it's that.
It's all crazy because, you know what I mean, the English Empire was built off the back of slavery and cheap labour.
No doubt.
And we were speaking before about how we don't really hear of many English activists in the time of slavery. And I was doing my research at this because the English were actually quite smart and they kept everything off of their shores. So America is an English colony. So any money the Americans made off of slavery was being sent back to the UK. Mm-hmm. Even as it stands, America is not its own country. America is renting their portion of the continent from the English. We still get paid from the Americans. If you look at the
I didn't know that.
If you look at the tax, what's their tax called over there?
IRS or something?
The IRS. Yeah. If you can go on the IRS and it says it's a percentage of money is being paid back to inland revenue, being back to here, because they are actually just renting the country. So when we look at slavery, we got to know that even though you might not think that English profited off the back of slavery, before the Americans were doing this, the English had been doing this with the Irish for a long time. Before the Americans were doing this, the Portuguese were doing this for a long time. It was slightly different, but it was the same premise. And because of the greed of the English, they said, all right, listen, instead of, okay, we're going to pay you some sort of recompense, we're going to say, actually, no, we're going to scrap all of that, and you're just going to work for free, and that's it. So when you understand that about the English, the heritage of England, so that's something that you're not taught about English history, that actually they were actively part of the slave trade. You're most of the time you're told it was America, when really and truly America is a subsidiary of England. So once you learn that part of history, you'll understand why there is so much resistance of you learning your history before slavery, because they say, actually, if these people find out that actually we didn't civilize them, actually we tore down what they had for us to be able to benefit, then it's going to start to change the narrative of the story. People are going to start to want to ask more questions, and we're going to lose control of their minds, because that's what they're really doing. They're controlling our minds.
And again, as we said, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. We're living in England, so we're going to learn about English history, and we're going to learn it in a way that benefits the people of England. Obviously, the ruling class of England are going to teach it as if it was them who came and, you know what I mean, educated us. So again, this is nothing new to what you're saying, but we need to learn about our history and about who we are, so that we can actually see that the situation that we're in now is not the situation we've always been in. It's not. You understand? Black people haven't always been oppressed like this. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, going back to a point you made earlier, actually, that I want to pick up on about the pendulum swinging from one side to the other side. You're saying that some of these black organizations that promote these Pan-African studies teach it in a way to say that the white man is a lesser human than the black man, which is something that's not true. Everybody is equal on the face of this earth. But I feel like that negative shouldn't take away from the idea of these Pan-African schools. And I think that's the point where being educated from the home steps in, because besides formal education, as in going to school and university, a lot of us develop from within the home. So like I said previously on the other podcast, that I was told that white people bath with their dogs outside the home. Maybe certain people who came inside my home, but the people who raised me and I really trusted the most and I learned most of my social skills from, they sat down with me and said, listen, it's not true. I can't say that some white people don't bath with their dogs, but to have the opinion that all white people bath with your dogs is illogical, and therefore that you have to take everything you learn with a pinch of salt, and to say, okay, maybe that person who got dog hair on them all the time does bath with their dog, and the person who doesn't have dog hair on them at all doesn't bath with their dog, if you get what I mean.
Not really.
Not really. Alright, basically all I'm saying is we need to, in the discussion of education, you have to discuss what education comes from the home.
Okay.
You can't expect the world to raise your children. You have to be an active part of your child's life, teaching them right from wrong and teaching them this is the way the world is, this is the way it should operate, but it doesn't operate in an ideal world. Don't let that crush you. Learn from it and now grow into be a better person. So these kids who are coming from a Pan-African school, who are being taught in the Pan-African school that all white people are below all people of color, when they get home, they should say, actually, what your teacher taught you about pyramids, maths, philosophy was true, but the bit where he says that we should look down on white people, that is not true, because everybody is equal in this world. So finding the balance. And
also, obviously, even if your child goes to a normal state school and they're there for 8 hours or however long they're there for, then they're not going to be learning anything about history that's beneficial to them, really. The Tudors, the Vikings, yeah, it's all great. I'm sure some of it's interesting. No doubt they were people, isn't it? We can learn from people regardless of what race they were. However, they're not going to be learning about their history in a way that enlightens them. So even if they're going to these state schools for 8 hours or however long they go, then when they come home, then you need to be teaching them about their history. You need to be teaching your children about who they are and about where they've come from, so that they don't feel that they're starting by themselves, so that they understand that there's people before them who are polymaths and who are architects and who are engineers and who are physicians and so on. You get what I'm trying to say? Because it's important. A person, if he feels that he's paving a new path, it's going to be more difficult for him. He might lose motivation. He might get sidetracked. And this is one of the reasons that I think that we see a lot of our youth, you know what I mean, on the street doing all kinds of foolishness, because they don't feel that they can succeed, because they feel that success is for a black person either being a rapper, in which case you've got to be rapping about killing people and about selling drugs, or they feel that success is about
selling drugs.
Selling drugs. You know what I'm trying to say?
You can't rap about it. Let's do it.
Exactly.
And success is all about showing out. It's not about any sort of interpersonal skills. It's about, okay, having a nice car.
Exactly.
Some chains. Like, just all things that are not for you. It's for how people perceive you.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people probably who who don't feel themselves successful, but because they got a nice car and a nice this, and people see them and they say, yeah, you're doing well for yourself, you know, you got a Beamer, and then the person just like, yeah. But really and truly inside, he's probably feeling like, boom. And I was like, I nearly fell subject to that way of thinking. Do you know what I mean? To be perceived as successful, when I knew that I am not at the level of success that I want to be at. That I always want to be better than I am today. And it was when I was looking to buy a car, and I was looking and I wanted to buy an Audi A3.
Nice hatchback. Yeah.
Nice hatchback, you know what I mean? Until I sat inside the Audi A3, and that is got the most cheapest interior. I ain't gonna lie. When you sit inside it, yeah, it's a Golf inside, isn't it? It's not a Golf GTI, yeah, it's a bog standard Golf. And when you sit inside, everything's all plastic. Everything, I'm like, And because of, I wanted the world to perceive me, I know if they see me with an Audi, yeah, they're only gonna look in and say, yeah, you got Audi, he's doing nice. That was the car for me. But when I sat inside, I realized actually this car is terrible inside. I then decided actually I want a different car, and then that's kind of the way. It was kind of like, you know, it wasn't an epiphany, but it was like I feel like it's a powerful message, isn't it? Everybody wants to be an Audi, yeah, or people want to be an Audi and be all rubbish inside, or people want to be something that's a little inconspicuous, but when you look inside, it's actually more comfortable, and actually the outside you might look like a bod or whatever, but inside you actually have some self-integrity and you're happy with what you see most of the time. And you don't really build your self-confidence off what the world sees.
That just to show how widespread that mindset is. How many of you actually know people who they will save up to buy like a nice chain or a nice belt or whatever, Gucci or Louis Vuitton or whatever it may be, nice little shoes, but then they ain't got money to pay the rent, or they ain't got money to feed themselves as nice as they would like to. You get what I'm trying to say? So, or
they're watching their family struggle.
Exactly, they're watching their mom struggle. Their mom who gave birth to them and raised them is still living out in the sticks, and they're all there driving around nice Beamers and all of this. So obviously it's something that it's a widespread mentality that people, they just want to show that, yeah, I've got this, I've got that. And to an extent, like, it can be, obviously you want to look nice, like, remember that look presentable, you get what I'm trying to say. But when you're doing it to have other people view you as successful, but you don't know anything about yourself, you got no knowledge of self, then it's not going to benefit you.
And that's exactly how the world want to keep us. They want to keep us doing these, quite frankly, foolish stuff, instead of learning about ourselves, learning our history, and saying, actually, we're not animals, we are better than what you say we are, and I don't have to have a nice car for you to think that I'm nice, because that's what it comes down to. You're only buying these stuff so that you can fit in, and it's crazy how sometimes I catch myself trying to be less black, if you can say that, like speaking with a softer tone in my voice when I'm around certain people, because I know that I'm perceived in a certain way. And it's crazy that I actually do that. That's something that is being oppressed in my mind, that actually my natural voice is aggressive. No, actually it's my natural voice. Mm-hmm. We just have deeper voice. But what they like to teach you is that your natural voice is aggressive. So anytime I have a conversation with someone, anybody else looking in is like, actually, you're aggressive. And I've been so oppressed that rather than to say to them, actually, no, your idea is totally wrong. What you think is totally wrong. This is the natural tone of my voice. I decide to speak softly. And I guess it comes back to that kind of colonial, isn't it? If you're a slave who stands up, you'll get chopped back down to size.
Mm-hmm.
So
just adding on to that, one of the reasons I feel that we need knowledge and education is to change our image in the media. Because, as we've said on this podcast and others before, that their image of black people in the media now is that there are some successful black people, yeah. So we see, I don't know who, like Barack Obama or whoever, yeah, the class is successful black person, even though he's mixed race, yeah. But the general image for a black person to be successful is seen as you're either a rapper, an athlete. That's it, really. A musician or an athlete. And it's not to put, you know what I mean, not to say that there's anything wrong with being good at sports or anything, but it dismisses all of the achievements of all the mathematicians and all the astronomers and all the physicists who were African and of African descent, who were Caribbean, who were African American, and before that. So I feel that we need to be educated about our history, about ourselves, and about our people now, so that we can combat that image, and we can also so that we can have a better self-awareness, so that we can feel better about ourselves.
I think again, that knowledge and changing the image of us in the media is so widespread, and it's so actually subtle that if you're not switched on, you would think that we have a chip on our shoulder and we're going on about something that doesn't exist. But like, I can just name a number of like Hollywood movies, yeah, about a talented young person of color who the only reason they made it is because their white lecturer came in and said, okay, stick close with me, yeah. Okay, these people calling you this, that, and the third in the dorm rooms, or they're calling you this, that, and the third. And it's the only reason that person, yes, they had natural ability, yeah, and they were actually the talent. The only reason they made it is because this white professor came, took them under their wing, and made them achieve. You know what I mean? Like, the story, this is the narrative they want you to believe in throughout society, throughout everything is right there in Hollywood. You know what I mean? You're nothing until a white man co-signs you and takes you on. But when it comes to this knowledge of self, you know, and the media, once you get a certain knowledge of yourself, you won't do certain things. Like, I was watching an interview with Dave Chappelle. And Dave Chappelle said he will never wear a dress.
Yeah,
he will never wear a dress. He said there's been so many times where they say, we've got this great idea, we want you to wear a dress. And because he has knowledge of self, he's like, no, I'm not wearing a dress. But there's so many people of color out there who just want to turn a buck and will do absolutely anything. Like I was saying,
and you named a few. Innit?
Where
I'm not trying to.
Hey, this guy funny, you know, trying to put people out there. But I'm just saying, like, boom, certain TV shows, they're like, okay, listen, this is your character now, yeah. Every time a piece of chicken pops up in the show, you're gonna turn up from somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, people want money so bad, yeah, and they have so little knowledge of self that they'll just say, all right, yeah, how much you gonna pay me for this? And then boom, every time the piece of chicken jumps on the plate, they turn up. These even come from like black TV shows where the family are black. But when you look at the writers of the show, the writers are white. So what you're seeing on the screen is coming from a Eurosceptic kind of mindset where, okay, we're just going to conform these people to these stereotypes. We're going to get actors who fit those stereotypes and who are not switched on, and we'll continue the cycle of people feeling like, okay, yeah, boom, the dad's really affluent, but his children are stupid. He was an anomaly within the black community. He was that diamond in the rough that we found. Everybody else in the show, yeah, conforms to
the usual black stereotype.
The usual black stereotype, and they have this one black character who doesn't, and they kind of parade that person and say, oh yeah, this is what you could be if, again, like Uncle Phil, you know what I mean, his professor in Princeton was a white man, and he said, oh, you can do this. And if you ain't got this knowledge to say, listen, I'm not just a slave who needs your cosign to make something of myself. Listen, forget what you're saying. Listen, I'm not popping up in the show every time I wear chicken. And the media just controls everybody's mind. There's a quote. It says, "The media is the most powerful entity in the world. It has the power to make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent."
Malcolm X said that.
Listen, and boy, I think we need to do a whole podcast on the media.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? This is how it always goes. We need to do a whole podcast on the media. But yeah.
And one of the things that I find interesting is that if you look at how Chinese people and people of Southeast Asian descent are portrayed in the media, I find it interesting because they, even if you look at like in the 1960s, them as a country, they were less powerful and they had less wealth than Africa did. Now, obviously, it's not the same because Africa was just coming out of colonialism. They had been being ruled by other people for 100 years and even more than that, really. But if you look at how China have grown since then and how Africa has, well, if we can call it growth, since then we see a huge difference. And it even shows up when you look at the media. Now, if I say a Chinese film, yeah, what are you going to start thinking about? You're going to start thinking about some mad guy, one martial artist who came and wiped out like an entire, you understand, on his ones. You get what I'm trying to say? Some superhero guy, like he saved 50 people here and that was before 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say? This is how they portray themselves. And it gets so deep that even now, if you fight with a Chinese guy, yeah, I'm not trying to be funny, yeah, but I reckon if you done some next move, you understand, man will start shaking in their boots and that. But what I'm saying is that this is due to the mentality that they've had, and they're not obviously it's not starting on equal grounds. We haven't had the same history, but this is a page that we can take and then try to apply that.
I think like what you said, it just jogged my memory about something I wanted to say on the previous podcast, that as black people, we are the only people who are judged on the minority of people who are doing wrong. You see, like we are the only people. You know what I mean? I don't walk around day to day thinking that Asian people eat dog because I've heard that Asian people eat dog. Do you know what I mean? I don't walk around day to day thinking that all white people are pedophiles because the majority of pedophiles that I see on TV are white. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to black people, the general consensus is that we are all criminals because a percentage of what you see depict black people as criminals. So it's crazy, man.
And another thing is that if you look at the way that white crimes are depicted in the media and the way that black crimes are depicted in the media, as you said, because when a black person does a crime, a lot of time, and I'm not saying all the time, and I'm not justifying any sort of crime, but as we said, if a person has no history because all their history, they just think they can't be successful because they think black people are not successful people. They feel that they're stuck in a sort of rut and they can't get out. Then they do turn to certain things such as selling drugs and, you know what I mean, robberies and that. And I'm not justifying. I'm not saying it's correct, but a lot of the crimes such as what the bankers do, yeah, why that's not seen. They get 1.5 years.
That's what I'm saying.
You understand?
Official government politicians, yeah, of our government are hiding money offshore. When a comedian did that, he was chastised. You hid your money. But when you got people like the Prime Minister of our country doing it, nobody is out down in street rioting and protesting against it. It's a crazy double standard. But I think we need to definitely have a podcast just on the media. But getting back to the education, I'll kind of couple summing up points. We were speaking about in the last podcast on the black community about having educational mentors. And I think going back to more the formal and just in all education, having an educational mentor would be something that would be beneficial to your personal growth. I think like a lot of people, especially from probably like 85 till probably around now, were really sold this image that university is the only way to go to be successful, which quite frankly is not the truth. And there's a lot of people out there who who went to university and now found themselves not working in a career that they actually studied in.
And vice versa.
And there's probably a lot of people who are in university now who are thinking that this isn't for them. Now, I don't know how far you're in now and how it is you going to university from like this year and next year, but which is 2016, 2017. The obviously the fees have gone up, and they're going to be removing the maintenance grant, replacing it with a maintenance loan. I feel like you need to be speaking to the time for educational mentors is now, because a lot of people have come out and found that university isn't this holy grail. You go in, you come out the other side, and now you're in the upper epsilon of society, yeah, and you'll be respected, you know. Especially as black people, you'll come out and you'll be perceived as still a thief, and you like hip hop and you smoke weed,
and £60,000 in debt as well.
But now you're £60,000 in debt. I would say for people who are still in secondary school, for them to actually go out and find out what they want to do. People who know people in secondary school and have gone to university, who haven't gone to university, should try to sit down and speak with these people and say, okay, listen, these are your options. You don't have to go to university to be successful. Or, okay, you want to be an architect. To be a successful architect, you need to go to university. So you need to now buckle down on your books. Listen, do you know what you want to do yet? If you don't, the best advice I can give to you is to get all of your GCSEs, yeah, and then from there, let's try to work out and reevaluate at the next point. If you know what you want to do, then start working on the stuff that is going to help you achieve what you want to do later on in the line. So that's one of the things I would say. People at university now, you may feel like, I want to drop out, this course ain't for me. I personally wouldn't advise it. What I would personally advise is that you save your tuition, your maintenance grant that is going to be non-existent, and you save your bursary that the university gives you, and keep it and invest it in yourself post-university. Go through, get the degree, stop living that university life of partying every weekend, and actually say, okay, listen, I'm going to now develop myself, I'm going to save this money, when I go out. Actually, what I now discovered that I want to do is open my own business. I've got a year and a half remaining. If I actually save my bursary and save my maintenance grant and whatever loans you've got coming in, I can actually have something decent to put down on a house or to open a business with, because the loan money before 2016, 2017, because that's all changing. But the money you get at university currently in 2015, 2016 is easy money, and nobody's ever going to come and knock your door down and try to take possessions out of your home off the back of that money. So if you, in general, want to go to university, it should be because you know where you want to head in life, and you know the only way to get to where you want to go in life is to take this route. So, again, even if you look at it on a, because we're not trying to put down university by any means. No.
Both of us
have gone through university.
But yeah, it's just don't feel that it's the only thing that you've got to. Yeah, you understand.
We say this because we've seen the university system fail so many of our peers, just based on it wasn't their motivation to go to university. It was what they felt they had to do to be successful, and it actually wasn't right for them personally, and it ended up putting them 3 years behind their peers who actually dropped out or did what they wanted to do from the age of 18.
Personally as well, though, I wouldn't recommend dropping out of anything, just because the mentality that a person has is important. So if you're doing something, it's good to stick with it and to finish it, because otherwise I've seen so many people who, once they stop doing one thing and give up, then that just becomes, it's like a spiral. Anything they start, they just don't end up finishing it. That's just from what I've seen.
So I don't know if there's anything else obviously, as always, we miss a whole bunch of stuff because it's just like the topics ain't as black and white as, okay, we say this and everything's covered. So if you do have anything that you want to add to the conversation, again, leave it down in the comments section. We'll pick up and we'll always go back round to these topics and rediscuss with new information that comes to light. So yeah, that was the More Than a Mindset podcast.
Again, follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at More Than Mindset. And a lot of people have been commenting and, joining the page and all of that. And it's leaving the comments that I'm finding, some of them are interesting, some of them are inspiring even. And, it's given us things to work with. And, just keep that coming in.
Yeah, we might have just kind of severed our ties, but we are still doing these university tours, yeah? So, what I just said 3 minutes ago, disregard that. And honestly, we're still doing these university tours. So, as always, information in the description box. Get in contact with us. We can talk through kind of what our proposal is, and we can try to arrange to get into your university and just have an open debate with you guys. Like, share, and subscribe.
If you want to describe, do that as well. I don't know. Let us know what you think, innit?
We're gonna put together an outtakes because
we got too many.
We got too many outtakes, but like, share, and subscribe, and look out for the next podcast.